Hello all, and it is nearly time for the Hunter and the Beast DLC to be released. As I'm recording this, we have about 24 hours before it drops, and of course there's been a ton of people with early access footage, and we've seen a lot of the different stats and what to expect. And a lot of YouTubers have gone into massive depth, with hour-long reviews, breaking down every single little kind of detail for you. But this video, it's not going to be quite like that. It's just a bit more of a chilled look on things, and it's going to be my top 10 things to expect from the DLC. So number one, it's going to be much like this lad right here. We're going to expect a lot more Footlords. So for those of you who do not know, Footlords across the board have had a massive reduction in cost. When I say massive, it's about 100 gold across most kind of units. Now this is because as the current meta stands, being able to move around and get your lord from A to B into, those positions where he can really make a difference is so key that basically mount lords are your only option. Foot lords like this little fella right here, apart from in niche matchups, so here we have some lizardmen up against Skaven, where, they can snipe out your lord from a long distance. So taking someone a little bit lower to the ground, hunkered down, less expensive, is a little bit less of a risky pick. So we can expect a lot more Footlords, making them cheaper. Now, do I think this is going to change the meta completely? Footlords will become the main thing? 100% no. I still think mounts are going to be far more useful than little lads like this guy right here. However, I think they're going to be a bit more common, so hopefully that will allow people to take a few of these different types of lords, and we will see a mix-up. So that is number one of my predictions, at least, of what you guys can expect after this new DLC and all the obviously changes and all that kind of stuff come into play. Now, number two, speaking of the lizardmen, is going to be Lord Croak. So unfortunately, the big flubbery toad himself has had a massive 300 gold points increase. Now, I definitely think he was a very powerful unit, however, he was quite niche in his own right. You'd often take him only against people like vampire counts and so forth, who really struggled to dodge his big deliverance of Itzas. Now, his magic, the deliverance of Itza, speaking of which, has actually also been nerfed slightly as well. Now, I still think he's going to be a very powerful combatant, but expect to see him a lot less. So, Footlords a lot more, Lord Croak a lot less, even in niche picks up like against the vampire counts, where he was quite powerful in his own right. He has been nerfed, which is a bit of a shame, because we do have Gorrock coming in, who's going to be a pretty cool little guy coming in, and he works perfectly with Croak. He's this absolute tank holding the front line down, while the deliverance of Itza is delivered from behind him, and of course, thematically, they work together quite a lot as well. So unfortunately, guys, number two is going to be that Lord Croak has been nerfed quite heavily, and I don't think you're going to see him anywhere near as much in multiplayer. However, still very powerful, just it's going to be hard to make work with that price cost. Now, number three. We do have massive changes to the Dowie. So Dowie have been buffed pretty much across the board. A lot of their units have been pimped up, but some of the main things, obviously Footlords, again, a decrease in cost, but also Dowie Footlords are gaining a massive mass bonus. So they're becoming a lot thicker, they're going to be a lot harder to push over, especially people like the White Dwarf have gained ridiculous amounts of extra mass, and Belagar, so they really shouldn't be getting pushed over at all, to be honest. So they're going to be a lot more viable, and the biggest change of all is Rune of Wrath and Ruin. That has been changed completely. It no longer does damage, which is a bit of a shame, because that damage was really helpful, but now it is a massive slow. Instead of just slowing a little bit, it is going to be slowing down people by, I believe, 75%, I think it was, or close to. Now, chariots are basically made redundant against Dowie, and of course they're a big problem. So this is, of course, a balancing situation, which I think was needed. Something needed to be done. And I think it's going to make Dowie a lot more competitive. Also, gyrocopters, something that's often kind of shoved to the side. Yes, now and again people use them as a bit of a niche pick, but the brimstone guns have gained 16 anti-large or bonus versus large damage, which is going to make them tear apart chariots and other kind of squishy big targets. Also, all the bombs for the gyrocopters and gyrobombers have been increased in damage, and I've seen from a recent early access tournament, they can shred front lines, especially against people like Skaven and Tomb Kings who have a lot of lightly armoured infantry. They're going to be doing a huge amount of damage. So for number three, that was the Dowie. Massive buffs across the board. You're going to see a lot more gyrocopters play, and chariots are going to be a lot less effective against them. So now number 4. If you guys keep up to date with the FAQs and so far, you will see there are a ton of changes to people's melee defense and melee attack. You may be wondering, why the hell has this happened? It looks like the battle's going to be over instantly. You know, everyone's melee defense has dropped, melee attack has been increased, but that is just for the Regiment of Renown, and that's because chevrons are changing. So chevrons no longer focus just on, well, not just on defense, but normally they're a big increase on your defense over your attack. That has been changed to balance it out slightly, so chevrons no longer do that, and you'll be seeing that across the board. People will be a little bit squishier and do a little bit more damage when they pimp up those chevrons. They're not going to be quite so one-sided anymore. So no, don't panic. If you saw that FAQ, don't worry. The battles aren't going to be over instantly. Warhammer is quite fast already, and it's not going to be that problem at all. Now let's load up a little battle in the background and have another one. We are going to have some tournament games popping up fairly shortly, which is going to be quite cool. But let's just go down to another little battle I did against Ninja and have that on the background while we go through this list. So let's go. Oh, come on. Let's just do this one. So that was number 4. Do not worry about the stats changes. It is basically just for chevrons. Now, number 5, the Wood Elf Rush. If you guys have been following this channel for quite a while, you've seen any of my Wood Elf games, I tend to love bringing a Wood Elf Rush build. Now, that is normally involving Dryads, Wild Riders, Orion, blowing that big horn, getting that huge charge bonus, and crushing through the front line as fast as possible. Well, this tactic has now been buffed. So Orion himself, let's see if my opponent's actually, but I'm over here, now has Vanguard, which is incredibly powerful for him, allows him to get right up into the enemy straight away with those Wild Riders, blowing that horn and doing a ton of damage. That's going to be pretty damn cool, but also alongside that, the Regiment of Renowned Wild Riders have been changed slightly. They used to give guarding, which wasn't particularly useful, because Wild Riders, you want them darting around the battlefield as much as possible. You don't want them sitting in one place trying to protect your lord. So they've lost the guardian. Instead, though, they have gained anti-large, which is huge for the Wild Riders. Those guys are now basically, you know, Grail Knights walking around, just beating the crap out of people and doing a ton of damage. And I've seen them in action, and they work really well. They can go toe-to-toe with almost any cav. Now, if you combine that with Orion and his horn, when they charge, they just decimate opponents so much now. So, unfortunately, this is actually kind of a bad thing for me, because I feel like a lot more Wood Elf players are going to be taking this kind of Wood Elf Rush build, and opponents are going to be preparing for it. One of the main bonuses of this type of build is catching people unawares, you know, on off guard, which no longer is going to be such a possibility. Way Watchers, in return, have been nerfed slightly, so their speed has been slowed down, which is obviously very key. You don't want them getting caught. As we can see in the background over here, my opponent unfortunately had some of these guys caught, and now they're going to be even slower, which is quite unfortunate for them, but I understand the need to nerf them, and it's not like game breaking. They're still going to be very powerful. It's nothing too bad to worry about at all. But overall, Wood Elf Rush builds, much more viable now. Orion Vanguard, very cool, but people are going to expect it. That's a new tactic you guys can try out in the new patch. Now, number 6, there has been a ton of changes to the Winds of Magic, as we see a big old pendulum coming down here. A lot of spells have been buffed, debuffed, all kinds of madness. And I've just written down a few of the key ones. So let's get a nice little charge coming in here, and I will get those ones up on my notepad. So, Fireball and Wind Blast, which are 2 very powerful spells, have been nerfed. Fireball fairly heavily. I mean, it's still going to be useful, but it's been nerfed quite a lot. Wind Blast, still very effective, but it is a little bit less powerful. Still does very good, though, against factions like High Elves and so forth, who really have, you know, those blobbed up formations. Now, also, the Empire, I believe it's called Soulfire, but I may be wrong there. The Warrior Priest abilities of Bombardment has been buffed like crazy. Warrior Priests can now run into the kind of low-tier infantry, like take these Eternal Guard, for example, run in there, get completely surrounded, and drop this absolutely decimating bomb. I highly recommend going to watch Turin's Early Access Tournament or Italian Spartacuses, and you will see it in action, and it is now very, very powerful indeed. So lots of changes to Winds of Magic overall. It's going to take a little while for the meta to set down, but expect, you know, spells not to do what they quite once did. Some have been buffed, some have been debuffed, and of course it will take a little time for everyone to figure out what all those are and go through them all. So that is number 6, as we're doing a little spin here. Winds of Magic have been buffed up. Well, changed, at least. Now for number 7, expect a significant shift. Okay, this is one more kind of, not necessarily a tip, but I suppose it is what to expect for newer players. There is going to be a huge shift with all these changes coming in. There's going to be some crazy builds in the first couple of weeks as people try different units out. Much like the Dread Sorin, a lot of the early access people think it's not going to be very good. However, that's because everyone is expecting it. It's brand new, and people are just, countering it as much as possible. So it's going to take a few weeks for the meta, to sit down and all these new tactics come out of play. So do not panic that the whole game is going to shift slightly. Now, it's not going to shift crazily. Nothing too mad is going to happen. It is only a DLC, and yes, there is quite a few changes, but, units which were good are still going to be, even if they've been dubbed, very decent and so forth. There's nothing too game-breaking coming into play, but things are going to be slightly different, so do expect a complete meta shift when you guys do pop on to play online. That's one thing you're going to have to look out for, but at the same time, expect a couple of weeks at least for it to settle down before you can really decide what units are good and what not. Of course, all the new players, or not players, or new units are going to be getting used in a completely different, varieties of matchups, and of course you'll be able to see that all on the channel right here as well. A little segue in there, little shameless plug, subscribe, like, all that kind of good stuff, to see all the good stuff that is going to be coming along. So number 7 there, expect a big shift, nothing too crazy, but it will take a few weeks to settle down. Now number 8 is a very important change for all you guys who do enjoy multiplayer. There are now unit caps. So when you hop online, you can no longer just spam, like 10 units of Black Orcs, because they are going to be capped now. I believe it's going to be 5 units of the same type of unit. Shields count as the same as non-shielded units and so forth. You can only take a certain amount of large entities, and you can only take, 2 Arachnarok spiders instead of 3 spiders and so forth. So there is going to be unit caps now, much like you see in tournament play. Now, this is a fantastic change for me, and I think good for new players as well, because you're not going to get any super cheesy builds anymore coming in. That's kind of going to be put down a little bit. I'm sure some people will be able to cheese and break the game as much as possible, but it will change a little bit, and kind of force people to experiment with builds, which is going to be pretty damn exciting. So unicaps are a thing now, great for new players. Also, this does extend to Regiments of Renown, however, which I have mixed feelings about. I understand why. You can now only use 3 Regiment Renowns in any army, which is great. But I feel it really does kind of punish the greenskins who have a lot of those cheap Regiment Renowned units. However, overall, I think it is a good change, and unit caps, big thumbs up from me. So ladder is going to be a little bit more tournament play. Now, you can turn these off if you're just doing multiplayer with your friend, or keep them on, Either way is fine, and you do have the option to do that, which I like that they've added in the option. Now, number 9, Gotrek and Felix, the fearless slayer, or the most successful and most least successful slayer of all time, and his trusted companion are coming to the game. Now, I believe they're going to be a legendary lord and legendary hero, of course Gotrek being the lord and Felix being the hero. They're going to be coming in here and being available to Bretonnians, Empire and Dowie, both on campaign and in multiplayer. Now, we don't know too much about how they're going to work. That is going to be released, in future, probably like weeks. And the way you can get these guys, they are going to be free. But if you want to get them about a month early, I think it was 3 weeks to a month early, you have to go buy the latest White Dwarf, or the dwarf, White Dwarf coming up, which is the comic that comes out, or magazine, sorry, for Warhammer, as in the tabletop game. You do that, you get a code, you then enter the code and you get them nice and early. I'm sure there'll be codes floating around the internet as well, but do go in and support, the tabletop. It is what inspired this game and allows this game to kind of, do what it's done, which is obviously very fantastic. So if you buy the latest White Dwarf, you get Gotrek and Felix, but have no fear if you don't have the money to go buy that, or you have no interest in tabletop, you're just here for the Total War experience. Next month, they are going to be coming out. I don't have an exact date, but I believe it is the middle of next month. They're going to be free for everyone. So we're getting an extra 2 free Legendary Lords, and they are, of course, the 2 old friends that were hinted. Expect them to be absolutely powerhouses. Gotrek probably carrying the squad a little bit. I expect him to be unbreakable, anti-large, all that good stuff. A bit like a souped-up Ungrim. And Felix is probably going to have some great synergy of him, giving buffs and whatnot. So Gotrek and Felix, very exciting. I highly recommend their book collection as well. Especially if you're new and trying to get into the fantasy lore, I think that or the Malice Darkblade series are 2 very good places to jump off in. And lastly, number 10 is expect a lot more of these crossover DLCs. So in this one, of course, we have the Empire from Total War Warhammer 1 and the Lizardmen from Total War Warhammer 2. Now, they're going to be a little bit clever here, so crossing over the games is a great way of making people buy Total War Warhammer 2 if they want these things, Total War Warhammer 1. It combines the games, links them closer together. So 100% expect more of these to happen. I believe that's probably the only DLCs we're going to be getting up until Total War Warhammer 3 is released. I highly expect, my main prediction is going to be High Elves versus Goblins, or at least Orcs, in the next DLC, which I think will be coming probably in a couple of months. They're probably going to leave it a little while, maybe a similar gap we've had between the Prophet and the Warlock and the Hunter and the Beast. We will be getting, definitely, in my opinion, more crossover DLCs. I'd like to see Beastmen and Wood Elves get some love, but I'm not 100% sure if they are going to or not. It'd be interesting to see what they pull out, but definitely expect more of these crossover DLCs. This one has gone down very successfully. I think it looks really fantastic. I'm so excited to play as the Lizardmen with some of those big dinosaurs, getting those Razordons. They look unbelievably badass. I think CA have really upped their game with how they're doing their DLCs in the last 3 or 4 DLCs, to be honest, have been absolutely fantastic. They've really upped their game with them. Cinematically, they're amazing. Thematically, they're very cool, and they add a lot to campaign and multiplayer, so expect a lot more of them. So guys, those are my top 10 things to expect from the DLC, which is dropping tomorrow, and obviously all the meta changes that are coming with it. Hope this was useful for you guys. If you just wanted a bit of a small, quicker video than any of these long breakdowns, I think those are going to be the most important changes. Of course, there are plenty of videos out there explaining some of the every little kind of detail, if that's your type of thing, but I think this covers the broad range of the majority of stuff to expect from this DLC. I hope to see you guys on the battlefield. Very excited to try out some of these new units, and I am hopefully going to be streaming all the new fun stuff, mainly focusing on the Lizardmen, but also getting in the Empire tomorrow. Now, unfortunately, I do have to go to hospital tomorrow. I'm having a small procedure, which I can't remember the name of it, but it's a little bit gruesome. So cover your ears if you're a bit squeamish, but basically I'm getting a camera shoved up my nose, then back down my throat and into my stomach, which is going to be a little bit horrible. So I may end up with a terrible sore throat and not be able to stream, but even if I do have one, I'm probably going to force myself to, try and stream some of the new stuff. So we're definitely going to be live, hopefully at 8 PM tomorrow, British Summer Time. I will try and get a video up before I have to go to hospital, but I'm not sure when the DLC drops. Unfortunately, if Steam is correct, I think it drops just as I go in to actually have stuff done. But expect a lot of footage over the coming weeks of all the new units, so do stay tuned. Please subscribe and like if you enjoyed the video. Until next time, guys, stay awesome.